In our last video, we saw the epic clash of 6,000 tanks at Kursk. But the battle was decided long before the first shot was fired. It was won in the shadows by spies and codebreakers. June 1943. A top-secret document detailing Operation Citadel, Hitler's master plan for the Battle of Kursk, is silently handed over to Soviet hands, setting the stage for one of the greatest ambushes in military history. As Nazi Germany tightened its grip on Europe, a quiet network of spies and codebreakers was about to unravel its fiercest assault. In the spring of 1943, the Lucy spy ring, operating from Switzerland and led by Rudolf Rössler, received a crucial piece of intelligence. They had obtained detailed plans of Operation Citadel, the German offensive strategy aimed at the Kursk salient, a vital point in the Soviet defense line. The information uncovered by Rössler, who intriguingly was believed to have direct contacts within the German High Command, sketched the Wehrmacht's intentions to encircle and annihilate the Soviet forces concentrated in the Kursk region. Meanwhile, British intelligence, through its ultra-code-breaking operation at Bletchley Park, further bolstered Soviet foreknowledge. Ultra-intercepted and deciphered traffic pertaining to Wehrmacht troop movements and logistics. These decryptions, confirmed by Rössler's intelligence, detailed the concentration of German forces, including divisions of elite panzer tanks, which were being amassed for a massive assault. The British shared this critical information with the Soviet Union under the secretive protocol established by the British-Soviet Intelligence Sharing Agreement. By early June 1943, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and his top military strategists, including Marshal Georgy Zhukov and General Alexander Vasilevsky, were poring over these reports. They knew the exact locations where German forces would strike first, the northern and southern flanks of the Kursk salient. Understanding the importance of foreknowledge, Stalin authorized the implementation of a vast defensive preparation termed the Kursk Defensive Belt. This involved constructing extensive layers of minefields, anti-tank ditches, and fortified positions designed to absorb and deplete the German armored spearheads. The depth of the Soviet preparations can be encapsulated in the numbers. Approximately 1.3 million men, over 3,600 tanks, and 20,000 artillery pieces were strategically positioned based on the intelligence received. Personal accounts from Soviet soldiers like Ivan Sidorenko, a noted sniper at the time, recount how knowing the enemy's plan bolstered morale and preparedness. Sidorenko mentioned in his diaries how his unit was briefed in detail about the expected routes of German tanks and the crucial points where Soviet defenses could counter them effectively. These strategic preparations, grounded in the intelligence provided by the Lucy Ring and enhanced by Ultra's revelations, transformed the Kursk salient into a veritable fortress, ready to withstand and attrite the German forces. As July 5, 1943, dawned, the day the German offensive began, the Soviet forces were not caught off guard, but were meticulously prepared. The immense fields of anti-tank mines took a heavy toll on the German panzers, significantly slowing their advance and disrupting their formations. This allowed the well-prepared Soviet artillery units to target dense groupings of German troops and armored vehicles with devastating effectiveness. Marshal Zhukov, reflecting on the battle in his later writings, underscored the importance of intelligence in warfare. He stated, "The ability to know the enemy's intentions in advance made possible our comprehensive and detailed plans for deployment and counteroffensives. It was a game of chess where we foresaw many of our opponent's moves." With the battle plans in hand, Soviet commanders began crafting a response that would hinge on the strength and strategy of their leaders. The intelligence on Operation Citadel not only saved countless Soviet lives, but also marked a turning point in World War II, illustrating the profound impact of espionage and code-breaking in shaping the outcomes of battles. This layer of strategic preparation, built on the foundation of intercepted plans and decoded communications, was instrumental in orchestrating what would become one of the greatest defensive victories in military history. At the heart of the Battle of Kursk lay a strategic duel between two contrasting military minds. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, a proponent of aggressive mobile warfare, and the Soviet duo of Georgy Zhukov and Konstantin Rokossovsky, masters of in-depth defense and counter-offensive strategies. Manstein's plan, codenamed Operation Citadel, was designed to pinch off the Kursk salient with simultaneous attacks from the north and south. His strategy was predicated on the element of surprise and rapid movement, intending to encircle and crush the Soviet forces in a swift pincer movement. However, the Soviets were not to be easily outmaneuvered. Armed with crucial intelligence from the Lucy spy ring, which had provided detailed information about German plans and troop movements, Zhukov and Rokossovsky crafted a layered defensive strategy. This included multiple defensive belts extending up to 250 kilometers deep, heavily mined fields, and fortified positions designed to absorb and deplete the German panzer divisions. Rokossovsky, in particular, focused on flexible defense in depth, a strategy he described as killing the enemy with space, ensuring that German forces would lose momentum as they got drawn deeper into Soviet territory. The intelligence also enabled the Soviet commanders to deploy a staggering number of resources strategically. By the time Manstein launched Operation Citadel on July 5, 1943, the Soviets had amassed approximately 1.3 million troops, around 3,600 tanks, and over 20,000 artillery pieces and mortars in the Kursk salient. In contrast, the Germans could muster about 900,000 soldiers and 2,700 tanks. This discrepancy was not just in numbers, but in the preparedness and positioning that Soviet intelligence had facilitated. Zhukov's use of counterintelligence was not merely defensive. He employed deceptive operations, including the use of dummy tanks and transmissions of false radio communications, which were purposely fed to the Germans to confirm their biased expectations of Soviet weakness. Rokossovsky's first-hand account, later documented in his memoirs, recalls, "We knew their strengths, perhaps better than they knew themselves, and we were ready to exploit every weakness." As the battle commenced, the effectiveness of the Soviet preparedness became apparent. German troops found themselves bogged down by the extensive minefields and robust Soviet resistance. Manstein's forces made initial gains, but could not sustain the momentum. Soviet anti-tank defenses, consisting of camouflage dug-in tanks and anti-tank guns, inflicted severe losses on German armored divisions. A poignant moment, reported by a German tank operator, Heinrich Severloh, encapsulates the emotional and physical toll of the battle. Each advance cost us blood and iron. It was no longer warfare, it was systematic murder. The strategic foresight of the Soviet commanders, informed by the intercepted communications, proved its worth further when they launched a massive counteroffensive on July 12th, just as the German forces were overstretched and fatigued. This counterattack not only halted the German advance, but also marked the beginning of a relentless pushback that would eventually see the Red Army reclaiming lost territories and pressing towards the heart of Nazi-held Eastern Europe. While commanders plotted these intricate moves and counter-moves, heavily influenced by the intelligence they had each received, the real battle also unfolded brutally on the ground. As Manstein attempted to outmaneuver the deep Soviet defenses, and Zhukov and Rokossovsky orchestrated their counterstrokes, tanks and infantry were locked in a cataclysmic showdown, marking Kursk not only as a battle of wits, but also as one of the largest armored engagements in history. At the crux of the Battle of Kursk, the German Tiger and newly introduced Panther tanks were poised as technological marvels, engineered with thick armor and powerful guns designed to dominate the battlefield. The Tiger, equipped with an 88mm gun, was capable of destroying most Soviet tanks before they could even get in range to retaliate. The Panther, intended to be more mobile and just as formidable, boasted a high-velocity 75mm gun. On paper, these machines looked unbeatable. However, their actual performance at Kursk told a different story. The Panther suffered from mechanical failures and reliability issues, often breaking down before they could engage the enemy. Historical records reveal that out of the 200 Panthers deployed, only 40 were operational due to mechanical and engine failures. On the other side, the Soviet T-34 tank, though less sophisticated, shone in its resilience and ease of production. The T-34's sloped armor effectively deflected German rounds, a revolutionary design at the time that significantly boosted survivability. As recorded in the memoirs of Soviet tank commander Mikhail Koshkin, our T-34s could keep moving even after taking multiple hits, a testament to their ruggedness in the face of the seemingly superior enemy technology. Moreover, its diesel engine was less prone to catching fire compared to the gasoline engines of German tanks, a critical advantage in the fiery exchanges of tank warfare. The glaring disparity in reliability and production capacity between German and Soviet tanks became evident as the battle wore on. German tactical doctrine, heavily reliant on the mechanical superiority of their tanks, was underprepared for the frequent breakdowns. An intercepted communication from the German 4th Panzer Army highlighted the frustration, noting that half of our tanks are immobile due to engine issues or track failures. This unexpected snag disrupted German operations and allowed the Soviets to exploit these gaps effectively. The voluminous production of the T-34 also meant that the Soviets could afford losses that would have been unsustainable for the Germans. A report from the Central Archives of the Russian Ministry of Defense indicates that over the course of the battle, the Soviets deployed more than 3,000 T-34s, replenishing losses rapidly and maintaining pressure on German forces. This mass of metal was not just a numerical superiority, but a psychological blow to German troops, who often found themselves facing relentless waves of Soviet armor. Personal accounts from the ground echoed this sentiment. German tank operator Hans Müller recounted in his diary, "Each time we knocked out a T-34, it seemed as though two more appeared on the horizon. It was a never-ending stream of steel that wore us down both mentally and physically." This overwhelming force was not just a matter of numbers, but of strategic deployment, as Soviet commanders like Zhukov maximized their armored units' impact through coordinated assaults, exploiting the slower repair and recovery rates of German armored forces. As tanks clashed in the south, an equally intense battle was unfolding in the often overlooked northern sector of Kursk. Here, the technological interplay and tactical decisions painted a broader picture of the Eastern Front's brutal armored warfare, illustrating not just a clash of steel, but of strategic intellects and industrial capacities. The Battle of Kursk was not merely a contest of strength, but also a testament to the resilience, innovation, and sheer will of the forces involved, underlined dramatically by the technological duel that played out across its vast, scarred landscapes. The northern pincer of the Battle of Kursk, while less glorified than its southern counterpart, played a pivotal role in the Soviet strategy to encircle and incapacitate the German forces. Under the command of General Nikolai Vatutin, the Voronezh front braced for the ferocity of German Army Group Center, spearheaded by the 9th Army under General Walter Model. This front, beginning its engagement on July 5, 1943, was tasked with holding the line near Orel and Kursk, an area dense with hills and ravines, providing natural defensive advantages that the Soviets skillfully exploited. As the battle commenced, the dynamics on the northern front were characterized by intense artillery duels and relentless aerial bombardments. The Soviets had constructed multiple defensive lines, an impressive feat involving over 300,000 men who laid countless mines and dug about 4,000 kilometers of trenches. When the Germans launched their offensive, they met a wall of resistance that was significantly sturdier and better prepared than anticipated. The fighting was brutal and direct, with Soviet troops fiercely defending every inch of ground, utilizing the natural terrain and their extensive preparations to their advantage. One poignant story from the Northern Front that highlights the human cost of this strategic battle involves Sergeant Mikhail Petrov of the 307th Rifle Division. On July 12th, during one of the fiercest tank battles in Prokhorovka, Petrov's squad was tasked with defending a critical ridge overlooking a key supply route. Despite suffering heavy casualties, Petrov and his men held their position, inflicting significant damage on German tanks using nothing more than anti-tank rifles and Molotov cocktails. Petrov later recounted, "The earth itself seemed to explode around us. We fought not for glory, but for every breath we took." His personal account embodies the determination and grit of the Soviet soldiers during these intense confrontations. Strategically, the resistance at the northern pincer was crucial. It not only sapped German strength, but also delayed their progress significantly, allowing the Soviets to reinforce their positions in the south. This delay played into the overarching Soviet strategy of attrition, bleeding the German forces dry in a war of exhaustion they could ill afford. Historians often cite the Northern Front's resilience as a decisive factor in the eventual encirclement and defeat of German forces in the Battle of Kursk, as it prevented the Germans from achieving the swift victory they had anticipated, thereby disrupting their strategic plans and timelines. Moreover, the Northern Pincer showcased the effectiveness of Soviet counterintelligence efforts. The Red Army had prior knowledge of German plans thanks to the intelligence gathered by their spies, which allowed them to fortify the exact locations of the expected attacks. This preparation was evident in the depth and complexity of the Soviet defensive lines, which were specifically designed to counter German tactics known to Soviet command through intercepted communications and espionage. As the Battle of Kursk drew to its dramatic conclusion, the importance of the Northern Front became increasingly apparent. The sheer tenacity of the Soviet defense there not only exemplified the strategic and tactical acumen of the Red Army, but also highlighted the critical role of intelligence in wartime. The Northern Pincer was not just a theater of war, it was a testament to the power of preparation, the valor of the individual soldier, and the profound impact of intelligence on the outcomes of battles. While the Southern Pincer often captures the spotlight in discussions about Kursk, the Northern Front's contribution to the Soviet victory and its strategic significance cannot be overstated. The determination and sacrifices of those who fought there ensured that the Nazi advance was halted, marking a turning point not only in the Battle of Kursk, but in the entire Eastern Front of World War II. The echo of espionage resounded through the Battle of Kursk, not merely influencing minor tactics, but fundamentally deciding the fate of Nazi Germany's operation. As the Wehrmacht amassed its machines and men in the spring of 1943, Soviet intelligence, particularly the Red Army's GRU and the NKVD, had already commenced an intricate symphony of surveillance and countermeasures. From intercepting German communications to deploying double agents, the Soviets crafted a web of deceit and detection that ensnared the Nazis in their own ambitions. The pivotal intelligence coup came when a decrypted message revealed the exact date and location of the German offensive, July 5th, targeting the Kursk Bulge. Armed with this knowledge, Marshal Zhukov prepared a defense in depth, saturating the area with mines, anti-tank ditches, and fortified positions that would bleed the German forces dry under the code name Operation Kutuzov. As the battle unfolded, the impact of this foreknowledge became starkly apparent. The Germans, led by Field Marshal von Manstein, plunged into a phalanxed morass of Soviet defenses, their every move anticipated and countered. The Red Army's strategic positioning and timely reinforcements, hastened by the deciphered intelligence, ensured that Nazi spearheads, such as the formidable Tiger tanks, met not with surprise and swift victory, but with fierce resistance and attrition. The Battle of Kursk not only halted the German advance, but also marked a definitive shift in World War II's Eastern Front, delivering a blow from which Hitler's forces would never fully recover. The Wehrmacht's loss of over 500,000 men, 3,000 tanks, and 5,000 aircraft in the ensuing counter-offensives underscored the devastating efficacy of Soviet counter-espionage. Reflecting on the long-term consequences, Kursk's implications stretched far beyond its blood-soaked fields. It was a watershed in military intelligence's role in wartime strategy, proving decisively that information could wield as much power as iron and oil. The victory bolstered the Soviet Union's morale and military prestige, propelling them on a westward thrust that would eventually besiege Berlin. For the Nazis, the failure precipitated a critical resource drain and a crippling loss of initiative, hastening their defensive posture throughout the remaining war years. The role of espionage at Kursk also presaged the complex interplay of intelligence in modern warfare. The successful Soviet intelligence operations exemplified how deeply woven into the fabric of military strategy intelligence had become, turning the art of war into an art of knowledge. Leaders and strategists learned that the battle is often won before it even begins, shaped by the silent wars of spies and informers. Indeed, historians like Antony Beevor have noted that Kursk's lessons reverberate in contemporary military doctrine, where cyber warfare and satellite surveillance now play the roles once held by decrypted telegrams and undercover agents. In conclusion, the Battle of Kursk serves as a stark reminder and a compelling chronicle of the power of intelligence in warfare. It was not merely the soldiers on the ground or the tanks in the fields that sealed the Nazi defeat, but also the invisible army of cryptographers, spies, and analysts whose work preempted the clash of armies. As we reflect on this chapter of history, we realize that the echoes of Kursk still resonate in the strategic dialogues of today, reminding us that in the shadowy realms of espionage lies the potential to shape history itself. Thus, as the dust settled over Kursk, it became clear that the battle was not solely won on the field, but was also a victory scripted by the unsung heroes of espionage and code breaking. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe button for more fascinating historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.